What's up, everybody? Thunderbolts has been out for a couple of weeks now, and scribe Eric Pearson recently revealed some of the scrapped ideas that he wanted to use for the film's post-credit scenes, which I think these are ideas that are still on the table for the future of the MCU. Let's dive in. I want to start off with the scene he'd cooked up that he shared the least about, and this one is more than the other two I feel will be addressed at some point before the multiverse saga is over. It's just, well, let's get into it, but I feel like Marvel is still kind of testing the water with the character and the actor to be more specific. Pearson said, so I was throwing together, at the beginning, a post-credit sequence that had to deal with Kang, and it's tough to tell, in my opinion, what he had in mind because he wrote his first draft for this movie almost 3 years ago, if not more than 3 years ago. But I think on a base level, it was going to be about eliminating Kang from the picture. Which it makes sense why that didn't end up being in the movie. It has no ties to Kang outside of Ghost being Ant-Man's villain in universe, and he fought him in Quantumania. But they did have the Doomsday scene for a post-credit scene, and so I guess, they just wanted to keep setting things up like they do. However, if they weren't going to get rid of Kang with the scene, I think it would have actually been him going to the Thunderbolts or the Thunder Avengers, the new Avengers, whatever, and getting them to join his cause. I think that's something we're actually going to see from Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom now, and having them join forces with the Fox X-Men going up against Sam's Avengers and the Fantastic Four. Then moving on to the second credit scene that didn't make the final cut, it actually tied back to a Disney Plus show, one I enjoyed quite a bit. Pearson said another idea had to deal with more of a direct relation to the fact that Valentina, Val, sent Yelena after Clint Barton for the Hawkeye show, but as time passes, you're like, well, is anyone going to make that connection still to the thing that they haven't seen in 2 or 3 years? Now, that one is kind of tough because there were a lot of things out of their control, like the writer's strike, that kept pushing projects back, and so something, that would have been a relatively recent thing both in universe and for the viewers becomes a distant memory. But that's why us YouTubers exist, to remind those who forget when things like this come around, so I think this one, could have worked. But at the same time, you also did have the Jeremy Renner accident where, he wouldn't have been available for any scene, and maybe that wouldn't have been a problem really, but I'm sure it did affect all of the Hawkeye plans they have. In fact, it did because there was that unfortunate story where Disney, and this was not Marvel, this was the Disney financial people that wanted to cut Renner's salary in half for Hawkeye Season 2, which that's still in the works by the way, and hopefully he gets his right salary and it works out in his favor. But utilizing my tinfoil cap, I think if they had actually included this scene in the movie, it would have introduced Clint's big brother, Charles Barney Barton, into the MCU. I think Val would have kind of stepped into Baron Zemo's role in his story of turning Barney against his little brother Clint, setting up the Season 2 story that's rumored to feature Trickshot, which is his brother, as the villain. Finally, and this is the one that's least likely to get circled back to in my opinion, but I do think there's a chance they do get around to it before the end of this saga. There's one with the great Baron Zemo. Pearson described it saying, there was definitely a tag that I did a million years ago where Zemo is like Kaiser Soze, like he's been pulling the strings from prison in some way, but I don't think that iteration lived longer than like, hey, what about this? Nope, not that. Now, in my opinion, with this one, it's like there's just no place in this Thunderbolts movie, even though it is a Thunderbolts movie, and that's kind of Zemo's thing in the comics. It relied so heavily on the mental health side of things, and of course, becoming the new Avengers, that the likes of Zemo and Bullseye and some of the classic members for the team just didn't fit into place. But that doesn't mean this is the only Thunderbolts team we'll see in the MCU, especially because of the raft's current occupants. We've got Zemo, Red Hulk, and the leader just chilling waiting for a breakout, and if you want to count the Netflix shows, you also have a Hellcat, Trish Walker, and Diamondback in there too. So, with that in mind, I see a world where Doctor Doom causes a prison break to just cause a little more chaos when he comes to Earth 616 in Doomsday, and maybe we see, a more, I don't want to say accurate because it wasn't the most inaccurate team we got in Thunderbolts, but maybe a more classic team of the Thunderbolts form and give our Avengers a headache during that movie. Zemo, he could get them all worked up like he did with Bucky, and then boom, there's your team. But an alternative storyline could also be like that once we've done Secret Wars and Franklin Richards puts everything back together after Battleworld, we could see Zemo or even Harrison Ford's Thaddeus Ross, if he wants to stick around, lead another Thunderbolts team into the mutant saga of the MCU. And so that's going to do it for today's video. These scrap concepts are always so bittersweet because I love hearing them because they're so cool, but I always wish we got them instead of one thing or another in the movie or project. But let me know which one of these three scrap concepts you want to see come to life in the future of the MCU down in the comments below, and make sure you have a great day.